Um, Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, as we have people from various regions in the world. Dear colleagues and friends, it's great to have you all connected today. My name is Cassia Carvalho. I work at WHO Violence and Prevention Unit. More specifically, I work with Sabine and Helen on all conference-related matters. It's a pleasure to see so many of you today, and thank you so much for joining us. We have a very interesting agenda today. We're going to hear from Sabine on the latest updates from her mission to Manila to plan the second ministerial conference to end violence against children. And I think she will pop up the agenda in the chat if anyone would like to read it. Then we are going to learn about a law clinic project from the University of Leiden, where students under the supervision of Anne Skelton, previous CRC chairperson, as you may remember, are monitoring the implementation of the pledges made in Bogota and suggesting follow-up questions to the CRC committee whenever countries are going through their revision process. We're also going to hear from UNICEF about the Global Caregiver Forum, which took place in Madrid last January and which brought together government, partners, and leaders to advance support for parents and caregivers around the world. Then we're going to have a presentation about the Asia Pacific Youth-led Summit on Ending Violence Against Children, which will take place in the Philippines from the 14th to the 16th of April. And finally, we're going to close with a presentation about the report, A Pivotal Moment for Donors, an analysis of the VAC, of the violence against children sector, and recommendations for the way forward. So before we begin, I would like to just briefly acknowledge that we are gathering just after the International Women's Day, which was yesterday, especially at this moment with so many horrific wars and conflicts going on. This is an important reminder that the fight to end violence against children is deeply connected to these broader struggles for peace, for gender equality, and for the rights of women and girls. So when we protect children, we empower families and challenge harmful social norms. We're also helping to shape a society that is fairer, safer, and more equal for everyone. We are right now in the middle of the CSW and also the 61st Human Rights Council. So if anyone online would like to share the event and engagement opportunities, please do so in the chat. And with no further ado, I'll pass on to Sabine.
Thank you so much, Cassia, and thanks to all of you for being online. It's always wonderful to see so many people. Apologies for those that had struggles registering. We've tried the new system with Zoom to try get all the town halls every 6 weeks. So it's great to see over 60 people online and hope others will be able to listen to the recording. And Cassia, I've popped the program into the chat. I think if Ben from UNICEF from the Caregiver Forum arrives a little bit later, we might have to use that because I think he was traveling. So we might have to shift those agenda items around a little bit. But I'll quickly dive into a quick update on the ministerial conference. As Cassia mentioned, I was in Manila a few weeks ago. Just as a reminder, you'll remember that in February, the Minister of Health of the Philippines, Dr. Herbosa, announced that he would like to host the second ministerial conference on violence against children. Subsequently, at the World Health Assembly, he restated it. And then during the one-year anniversary in November this year, he announced that we are going to move forward. So that gave us a ground for going to the Philippines to start the planning with the governments, with civil society groups, and so on. I do want to put a hiatus on the fact that we have tentative dates, which are the 18th and 19th of November. It's a Wednesday and Thursday, because the president of the Philippines is available on the Wednesday 18th. And the satellite events would take place on the Monday 16th and Tuesday 17th. So it's the week of the 16th to the 19th. And the hiatus is that we still are not 100% sure about the dates because we do realize that this is a very busy time. There's SVRI, there's ISPCAN, there's apparently a pathfinding meeting happening sometime in the year. So we really, before being 100% sure, we're just still consulting with partners. But we are very excited actually that the government of the Philippines is showing it's great also to see a minister of health. He's a surgeon who's seen way too many children that came into his surgery ward from suffering from violence. And so it's really great for once to see a Minister of Health that's really carrying this agenda and also willing to put his political weight and finances or financial resources behind this conference. So that's the conference dates are in principle the week of the 16th of November. The venue is the Marriott Hotel. We're still looking for co-hosting with other governments. We've reached out to Spain and Brazil, so exploring those opportunities. You'll remember that the last ministerial conference was Colombia and Sweden, and so we hope that the Philippines and Spain would be a great option. In terms of planning and governance, we have a national organizing committee on the ground, which is made up of local partners led by the Ministry of Health. Then we have the International Organizing Committee, which is the small group of co-hosts. Then we will set up something called a Program Steering Committee that will help flesh out the program, not just for the 2 days, but also for the satellite events. Approximately 10 individuals, a mix of national civil society, international NGOs, young people, survivors, UN agencies, and so on. And then we have a Friends of the Conferences, similar to what we previously had, a board higher level that will advise twice throughout over the next 9 months. Also important to note that we're thinking that the program this time should be lighter. For those of you that were in Bogota, you'll probably remember that your head was spinning. There were so many core events, side events, and so now we want to have a bit of a lighter core program on the Wednesday and Thursday so that we can really celebrate the pathfinding countries and the progress that they're making and really understand what they've done. Here also on new pledges, new political pledges and financial pledges, and celebrate that. And then the satellite events, we hope there will be less but bigger. So basically that there will be like mini conferences in advance on core topics. Of course, the breakthrough areas, parenting, school-based interventions, child protection systems and response services, possibly other issues like violence against, sexual violence against boys, online violence. So there will probably be fewer but bigger. So that's on the conference, co-hosting and governance and organizational structure. Similar to last time, invitations will be sent by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with advocacy behind to make sure that it lands on the right desks and that we also get involvement of ministers of health, ministers of education, and ministers of technology, maybe even ministers of finance. We know that it wasn't ideal last time, but it really seems to be the best way. We need to leave it to sovereignty. We need countries for themselves to decide who should be attending, knowing that we're very much hoping that ministers of health and education and technology will attend, since that was, in fact, not strong enough in Bogota. I think that's it. The website is still the website. The government of the Philippines is working on branding. You'll see there's a tab of Bogota, and there will soon be a tab of the Philippines. And then, of course, the core of the conference is still around the pledges, which we're following up on very closely. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Cassia,
Oh,
and
thanks.
maybe see if there's any questions.
Oh, yeah. If there's any questions, please just unmute and jump in. Or if you're struggling to unmute yourself, you can always pop the question on the chat.
I don't see any
Hi,
hands.
can I quickly ask Sabine? That sounds really interesting. How are you picking those side event topics and speakers?
Thanks, Leo. It's a really good question. We're not picking. What we'll probably do is for a call for proposals and then see what comes in, and we'll try to bring topics together. As you know, we want to stop siloing. We want to focus on solutions and to see if how much we can bring topics together so that they start working more and more together rather than splitting hairs. So it'll be both through a call and then through a bit of directive suggestions.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Rajiv?
Thank you, Sabine, for all the updates, and it's really exciting to see that it's happening in Asia this time. And I'm just, wondering that last time when it happened in Colombia, a lot of ministries came together from the national government in Colombia. So is this happening this time also? It's solely, led by Ministry of Health, whether the Ministry of Social Welfare, Social Justice are also part of the organizing team at this moment or not?
So that's a good point, Rajiv. So I have to say there, the Ministry of Health took the lead in organizing, bring on board the other ministries. So as I was in Manila, there was meetings with Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of Justice, and of course DSWD, which is the biggest ministry in charge of children in the Philippines. And so I believe the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Social Affairs, DSWD, are discussing. The invitations will go out from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, signed by the Minister of Health, because he's the one who's putting his budget and his political weight behind it, as well as our institutions. And then the invitation will be addressed to a delegation with very similar language than we had in Bogota. So yeah, we hope to answer in a short, Rajiv. Yes, we do hope there will be ministers of social affairs, definitely, especially as they're the pledge holders, but also ministers of health, technology, and education.
Thank you.
Any other question? If not, we can move on to our next agenda item. So I'll now pass the floor to Emma and Ikra from the University of Leiden to present on their Pledge Accountability Research Project. Emma, Ikra, can you unmute yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Cassia. Good morning, afternoon, really. I hope everyone can hear me. My name's Emma Gilbert, and I'll give a sort of brief overview of this project on behalf of the Leiden Law Clinic. And then my colleague, Ikra Khan, will give a short case study on our work in relation to her own country, Pakistan. So just by a brief way of introduction, we're a group of 4 students from the Advanced Masters at Leiden University in International Children's Rights. And each year the program hosts a law clinic where students really sort of put their minds to a practical project. And what we've done this year with Professor Anne Skelton's help and supervision as the former chair on the Committee of the Rights of the Child, is we've sought to monitor some of the country's EVAC pledges via their review meetings with the committee, which happened in the 100th session in January 2026. So sort of how did we go about the project briefly? We looked at which countries were coming up for review by the committee in the 100th session and identified 6 countries that had made EVAC pledges at the Bogota conference. So in short, the ones that actually got reviewed in January were Ethiopia, Spain, Pakistan, Ghana, and Colombia. And through our research, really put together a 4-page report for the committee on each of those countries, setting out, what was the pledge so that the committee had sort of access to that quite quickly. What has the progress been on the pledge so far? What are the outstanding challenges? And some suggestions for questions in the committee to raise in their in-person review meetings with them. And after that, we then watched the committee session to pull out and see if there was any either explicit or indirect reference to the Bogota conference by the committee in the state party review. So sort of briefly, what were our findings? I mean, Ikra is going to give a sort of short case study. So I'll make 3, I think, brief reflections here. The first is on the usefulness, I think, of the individual pledges. And kind of what we saw was that a lot of them were pre-existing commitments. And that's fine, but I think it just means that some of the role of those pledges is about amplification of sort of domestic and international commitments that are already existing. Some of them were a bit vague, and so I'll come back to that and what that means in terms of tracking their progress and accountability there. And some of them were also procedural in nature. Again, that has a role to play, but that was just sort of part of our reflection, I think. Reviewing policy, planning by a specific date, that kind of thing. The second reflection is really on our experience of tracking the pledges, and really, I think what this means for civil society. So, as I sort of mentioned, some of it was quite vague, but more it's about the availability of the information there. And I think what we found was that it was quite difficult to track progress by way of desktop research. Regularly, sort of the only information that was available was what the country itself had reported on the EVAC website itself. And so it really means, I think, in terms of accountability, it becomes more important to engage with, civil society who's really kind of monitoring on the ground what's happening, and but also how difficult that's going to be for them if there isn't sort of a mandate to require publicly available information on these pledges as well. Um, the last sort of brief reflection there is really on the engagement from the committee. And unfortunately, the committee only made explicit mention of the Bogota conference, really saying, the Bogota conference and the commitment in two country meetings. I think that was in for Ghana and also for Pakistan, I think, as well. And the tone was really one of encouragement, right? It was welcoming their international commitments, encouraging their ongoing efforts, but it didn't feature anywhere in the concluding observations for any of the countries. It seems to us that one of the areas that the committee can probably bring some useful oversight is just to ensure that there's enough budget allocated to these pledges as well, right? I mean, ultimately, things are going to come down to resources and money to implement these. So, that's where we sort of come with the brief reflections, and shortly, just in terms of what's next for this project as well, is there's the 101st session for the committee in September 2026. I know that's coming around the next review of the conference as well, and so we've identified 6 new countries that have also made EVAC pledges. Those are Kazakhstan, Lesotho, Tajikistan, Timor-Leste, Tanzania, and also the US has also made some pledges as well. And this time we're going to try and get it through some of the more official channels to the committee so that perhaps we can get something in some of the concluding observations as well. So that's my sort of quick whistle-stop tour. I'll pass to my colleague Ikra, who will talk about Pakistan specifically.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for sharing your reflections. Good afternoon, everyone. I was fortunate to review Pakistan, a country that I hail from. So I'll briefly present the key findings from the CRC committee review of Pakistan in relation to the pledges made by Pakistan at the Bogota conference in November 2024. So Pakistan made 3 key pledges. The first pledge concerned response and support services, which involved strengthening and expanding child protection services. And during the CRC dialogue, several issues were raised, for instance, when it came to progressively increasing the child-related budgets and tracking allocations for children across regions, especially in the context of Pakistan, where there's a devolved system. So there's really discrepancy as to how these resources are allocated in a uniform way. And at the same time, several other important concerns were addressed, and they were not addressed adequately by the Pakistan's delegation, specifically when it comes to the provision of child protection services in remote or conflict-affected regions, such as ex-federally administered tribal areas and Gilgit-Baltistan, and there was little discussion of migrant children, especially Afghan children, in the context of child protection responses. And the independence of the National Commission on the Rights of the Child was also questioned by Philip, especially when he pointed out how the National Commission on Child Rights lacks the legal, administrative, financial independence, as it is subordinate to the Ministry of Human Rights. And when it comes to the election of NCRC members, how does it happen? Does it comply with the Paris principles? Is it transparent at all? So the delegation did not adequately respond to this question. And then moving on, when it comes to stateless children, especially children who are not granted access to citizenship, and this pertained to Afghans, children who are of Afghan ethnicity. They're basically born in Pakistan, so they're not really migrants or refugees. They're basically entitled to citizenship according to the constitutional law, but the ongoing geopolitical. This is obviously outside the scope of the pledge, but um, again, the ongoing war with Afghanistan right now and the geopolitical tensions, it all kind of encapsulates why these children are denied the access to citizenship. Um, Thirdly, when it comes to freedom of religion for all children, especially children who are from minority backgrounds, that includes Christians, Hindus, Ahmadi children, marginalized Muslim sects who are subjected to blasphemy law. And when it comes to the how this blasphemy law is misused in the context of like charging children, that was not adequately addressed by the delegation. In fact, instead, the delegation responded that this law was non-discriminatory because it applied to Muslims and non-Muslims alike, but there was no acknowledgement of the disproportionate impact on religious minority children who are charged but not convicted under this law. So there have been cases where children are charged, and subsequently, when the cases go to the court, there's no conviction, but that charge in itself perpetuates this impunity around this when it comes to the misuse of this blasphemy law. So there was no indication given whether Pakistan intends to repeal or reform this law.
Dear, sorry to interrupt. It's just that I'm worried that we have enough time for questions. If there are any questions, are you wrapping up?
Yes, I'll just quickly highlight the second and third pledge. And the second, so I'll just wrap up in like 2-3 minutes.
2 minutes.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second pledge concerned the legal and policy frameworks for child protection. And yes, Pakistan made promising developments, especially when it came to the inaction of Zenab Alert Response and Recovery Act. And but again, when it comes to child marriages in tribal areas and harmful traditional practices, it was not adequately addressed, especially when informal justice systems exist that are outside the scope of the formal legal system. And the third pledge, which is the last pledge, it concerned parent and caregiver support. And when it comes to the provision of support to 28 million parents and caregivers to adopt positive and nonviolent parenting practices, there was no reference made as to how Pakistan intends to do it. What Pakistan answered was that it relies on lady health workers, but lady health workers specialization is mainly in terms of nutrition and medical health, not when it comes to education of educating parents in terms of corporal punishment. And also when it comes to alternative care system, no reference was made how to regulate international adoption or whether there was any protective frameworks in place to prevent misuse of adoption laws in cross-border situations. So yeah, that's it from my side.
And thank you so much for wrapping up so well. I just wanted to say thank you to Emma and Ikra and also your colleagues at the Law Clinic for this amazing work. And we very much welcome independent analysis following up the pledges. The conclusions that you reach are so relevant, so important for the discussions that we want to have with government, with civil society in this year of preparation towards another annual report, but also towards the second ministerial conference. So thank you so much. And we do hope that this law clinic activity continues with the next countries, and we do want to hear more about the reports. I know that you're writing papers and reports about the work that you have done. Do share, and we'll be happy to also share further. I want to open for questions if there's any. If you're okay in entering any questions, Emma and Ikra.
Yeah, absolutely.
If anyone has questions, please just unmute, or you can write on the chat as well. Okay. Oh, Greta, please.
Yes, thank you so much for this presentation. It is fascinating. I'm wondering whether the report, particularly the four-pagers you described, are available anywhere publicly or can be made available.
They're not at the moment. I know we are sort of sharing them internally with the WHO as well at the moment. And we've got them. I would perhaps have to speak to, I think, a few people to see if that's possible. Is that something that you'd be interested, that any others would be interested in, if we could make it possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think the
Okay.
cross-cutting themes you laid out are absolutely valuable and so important, and perhaps could have an opportunity as countries are considering the second ministerial conference, thinking about novel pledges, taking some of those lessons learned, maybe not necessarily the country specific findings. I think those might be, they might be interesting, but I understand there may be some sensitivities in sharing those. But some of the findings you drew in terms of cross-cutting themes could be really valuable for countries as they're thinking ahead to the second ministerial conference.
Okay. No, that's really helpful to know because obviously we want this project to be a practical one that's useful. And so we can look into putting perhaps a short report together that addresses those cross-cutting themes and if possible, giving examples, that kind of thing. Thank
Yeah,
you. That's
maybe
really helpful.
Emma, let me just jump in. And Greta, thanks for the great question. Indeed, the idea is to cross-fertilize between what's going on in the CRC committee and what's going on in the Bogota pledges. So any information that can be shared would be great. And as you said, I think it was you or Emma or Ikra, it's really in the spirit of accompanying the countries to do their work better. But I think, Cassia, we have to move on. And thanks so much, Emma and Ikra, for your work on this.
Yeah, thank you so very much. It's a fascinating work. So moving on, I would like to call Ben Perks. I believe he's online. He will share a bit of the highlights of the caregiver forum that in Madrid in January. Ben, over
Good
to
morning, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Apologies, I think I've got a slightly dodgy line. I'm just back from a very delayed flight from Australia to New York, so if I sound a bit groggy, I apologise. We had the Caregiver Forum in January in Madrid. The idea of the forum was to bring together governments, partners, to have high-level engagement. So the Queen of Spain was kind of had a co-host role. It was a UNICEF, WHO, Government of Spain event. It was attended by the Director General of WHO and the Deputy Executive Director of UNICEF. About, I think, 15 ministers from 15 different governments, and then other senior officials from another 10 or so governments, and a number of other partners and actors from all around the world. And the idea was to have a very sharp focus on calling for evidence-based, universal, progressive, evidence-based parenting programs to be scaled up as a global public good, to be universally available for every child, like a vaccine. We had the first day was in plenary, really landing the argument about why parenting programs are a game changer, not just for violence against children, but also for foundational development of children, for good mental health, for learning, and also that the focus of parenting programs is to not just child outcomes, but also well-being outcomes for parents. And I think that we had, all of us there and a lot of people on the call had a sense that we'd finally brought the issue of parenting and love and connection as a policy issue to up to a much higher political level. The second day was very much focused on technical and thematic aspects of parenting programs. We had a call to action or an outcome document that has been signed by currently 8 governments, including Spain, Lebanon, Serbia, Tajikistan. Zambia, and we are doing the hard work of getting more governments to sign it at the moment. We're working through the permanent missions at the UN here in New York, but also through our country offices and partners. I'm just going to put the outcome statement in the chat if I can. The link to that in case anybody's interested. Oh, excuse me.
I'm just sharing the link to
Are you sharing the link? All right.
Global Caregiver Forum.
So what happens now is that we're working with governments to sign the outcome statement, to follow up with governments at the country level on the implementation. A couple of countries are interested in pursuing this as potentially a UN resolution and working towards a UN summit. And we now have kind of an advocacy track that will continue. We'll have a webinar with governments and partners at the very beginning of April. This just really creates the space to take the advocacy forward in a kind of a sequenced and an appropriate way. Just to say that this work is also backed up by a number of other supporting products. We're just working on a multiple indicator cluster survey module on parenting, which means we'll have population level data on parenting practice and outcomes. We also are working on a benchmarking tool and a framework that was introduced at the conference that helps governments to identify what a parenting program should look like, what it needs to include, and also how to measure outcome and output. So we're beginning to put in place the kind of architecture around parenting programs that you have currently in the global advocacy policies based on things like vaccines or nutrition. And this is kind of a revolution, I think, for child development and child protection to have such a focused advocacy track on one particular intervention. I think that's it. I don't know if Sabine, Cassia, others, colleagues, Andrew Russo and others are on the call. If anybody else wants to add to that, but that's my very brief description, and I'm really happy to take questions on it.
Maybe just add that on the 1st of April, we're organizing a webinar that will give a full feedback of the Caregiver Forum with inputs from some governments and civil society organizations that attended. But huge thanks and kudos to UNICEF and Ben, the UNICEF team, for leading this Caregiver Forum, because it was the first time ever. And as Ben says, a revolution and a huge success.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cassia, back to you.
Then I don't know if anyone else has a question. Please just feel free to unmute and jump in. Yeah, but lots of celebratory hands and hearts. Thank you so much, Ben. I know you're probably very tired from your trip back. I hope you'll have some time now to rest and enjoy your son and the sun, hopefully, as well. Well, next, I would like to call Brianna, who I believe is also online, to share a bit on the youth-led summit, the Asia Pacific Youth-led Summit. Brianna, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Cassia. And just before I proceed, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, hi everyone. My name is Brianna Marinas. I'm from the Global Youth-Led Movement on Ending Violence Against Children. So you've probably heard about us, and we actually launched during the first ever Global Minister Conference in Bogota, Colombia. And so this, you'll get to know more of us as well in the coming months. So as Cassia mentioned, I'm here to talk very briefly about the first ever Asia Pacific Youth-Led Summit on Ending Violence Against Children, and it's called Violence Ends With Us. And the reason why the summit is called Violence Ends With Us, because we as children, young people, and survivors really want to take the power, we want to take the accountability and ensure that violence against children ends with our generation and that we're able to break the cycles of violence. And so the Global Youth-Led Movement is organizing this event. It's been a really, really big endeavor, but I'm very, very happy to share what we've done so far. And so it's going to be happening next month, just 1 month away, from 14th to 16th April 2026 in Rizal, Philippines. So you're probably familiar with Manila, but Rizal is my province, like right next to it. And it's a bit cheaper as well in terms of accommodations and everything else. We're going to be having 150 young delegates aged 13 to 25 years old, and we actually received more than 250 applications across the region. So just to share a little bit more in terms of objectives, so for this summit, we really want to strengthen young people's leadership and capacity in child protection advocacy to really ensure that we are building the next generation of change makers and essentially the ones who are going to be amplifying this cause and ensuring that we hit the 2030 goal. Next is to develop a unified regional agenda on ending violence against children. This is in the lead up to the second Global Ministerial Conference that the Department of Health and the government of the Philippines is hosting this November. Next is to foster intergenerational learning and dialogue between young people, decision makers, and regional stakeholders. And lastly, as what has been shared previously by my colleagues, is to generate youth-led solutions with $1,500 in seed funding. And so we're talking a lot about financing, about encouraging youth-led solutions, about actually creating change. And so I'm very happy to share that in terms of the 4 focus areas, we have child labor, child early and forced marriage, corporal or violent punishment, and online child sexual exploitation and abuse. There are many forms of violence against children, but we chose to focus on these 4 specifically because these is what are prevalent across the region and also what our partners are focusing on. And so I'm very happy to share as well that as of this moment, we have funding for 8 youth-led solutions, 2 each costing $1,500. And the hackathon teams that will be producing these solutions will implement them from May to October over the next 6 months. And then we'll be presenting the results of the solutions at the Global Ministerial Conference in November. And so this is kind of also recognized by the government of the Philippines and by different partners as like the official regional platform for children, young people, and survivors in the lead up to the ministerial in November. And just to like show the partners, I'm very, very thankful that so many partners and organizations and people have really trusted us with this youth-led endeavor and that you have and that you're willing to work with us. And just a big shout out to SIF, Oak, Kindernothilty, and Consuelo for funding this event. And I've been trying to push for this for a while. So just thank you also for funding this and believing in us and all of the other partners who are going to be sending delegates to the Philippines next month and who are technical partnering with us to share their expertise and their wisdom. And in terms of delegates, so we actually just closed registrations last week, and we only had 150 slots, but 250 registrations. And I'm happy to share that we have that we are going to be having delegates from 24 countries across the region. So 5 countries in South Asia, all 11 ASEAN countries, 4 countries in the Pacific, 3 from East Asia, and we're also going to have a special delegate from Africa from the Brave Movement who will be coming to share more. So yeah, very happy about that. And if you have any questions or would like to contact us or partner with us, perhaps please do reach out. This QR code is also the link to our LinkedIn. We're going to be sending a lot more updates in the coming months. And yeah, and just to like share briefly, I also want to let you know that aside from the Asia Pacific, we're also doing a lot of amazing work in the African region and also Latin America, but these are just some pictures from Kenya, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. So very excited, and we'll be seeing more of us next month. Fingers crossed for the first ever Youth-led Summit next month.
Yeah. Wow, bravo, Brianna, this is amazing. Congrats for organizing this, and we will definitely want to hear how it went after it happens. And so we'll hope to hear back from you soon, and wishing all the best. And I hope if anyone wants to engage, contact Brianna. This is super exciting. Thank you so much. And I don't know if anyone has a question. I can see a lot of really nice comments in the chat.
Thank you. And just to add as well, I think one of the questions earlier about the ministerial was if we have like multi-sectoral action. So I'm very happy to share that the Council for the Welfare of Children, Department of Social Welfare and Development, Department of Health, and the Department of Justice through the NCC, OSAIC, OSAM, they're all going to be at the event, as well as ACWC under ASEAN. So like all the partners are really going full throttle for children, young people, and survivors. And I'm just so happy and thankful for everyone. So that's all for me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Brianna. Okay, so we'll now move on to a presentation of a report, a super interesting report on the pivotal moment for donors, which is an analysis of the VAC sectors and recommendations for the way forward. Sabine, can you?
Yeah, thanks, Cassia. I just want to basically, as Cassia mentioned, this report is a pivotal moment for donors, was launched at the end of last year, and it's just an absolutely wonderful report. And Cassia will put the chat in the link. The writers, the authors, and were presented it to another group last week. And so rather than asking them to present again, we've taken that presentation and we'll be showing it now. So sorry if it looks a little bit funny, but we hope that you enjoy the presentation, and we really recommend that you read the document. You'll see it has the full document is interesting, the summary is interesting, and then you will see that there's a massive Excel file which is getting regularly updated with the donors, where the money is flowing from where to where, and in the next ministerial conference, as our colleagues from Leiden University said, we need to start budgeting these, and we need to start funding these pledges and making sure that they're getting implemented. So we hope that the Manila conference will be much more focused also on financing and implementation of the pledges. Cassia, please let me know if the sound does not work, but handing over here.
And this paper, while it was written for an audience, for this private, now we lost the slides, but it was written for a private donor, but they, after we completed the entire piece of work, they agreed that we could publish part of our analysis publicly. So the paper was published publicly this past summer in June. And while the kind of primary audience was for a private donor, we really don't see it as only a paper for donors, but for actually everyone who's in the room today, academics, NGOs, network leaders, UN, so everyone really who works in the violence against children space. And the paper had kind of three main goals. One was to map both the history and development of the VAC sector, including critiques of the sector, identify the current needs across programs, research, advocacy, as well as where the kind of overlaps, intersections with kind of different relevant priorities. As we were talking about, about health, education, all of these other sectors. And a bulk of the analysis, and we do have an annex that is just of all the donors that are working in this space, is really to do a deep dive the funding trends and a current assessment of the different the donors, the blind spots and the gaps and the opportunities for funding in this current ecosystem. The paper that is public includes several annexes, and as well as this funding map that I just mentioned. Next slide. So I'm going to touch on, and I won't, these next few slides, I'm really because we only have a few minutes, we're really going to focus on the recommendations. In terms of the methodology, it was, typical desk review. And we spent a lot of the time doing key informant interviews that started at the end of 2024, but the bulk were really between January and April. And it was a really interesting time to do these interviews because it was when everything kind of collapsed within the sector. And I think if you have time to look at the paper, and particularly looking at the quotes, it was a very reflective time for those that we were interviewing and really reflecting on what does the future mean, particularly in a time where resources are going to be scarce, and the expectation is the resources will be scarce for some time to come. And then the funding mapping. Next slide. For us, as we were doing, as we were having these conversations, but really thinking through with the donor that we were working with, that we felt it was really important to look back in order to look forward. I feel like as a sector, we typically don't do this enough. We don't look back, both in terms of looking at our successes, but also looking at our missteps as well. So the paper does have this pretty meaty section of the history, starting from the 1960s, the child development, child rights, to the emergence of a standalone violence against children sector, and the development of the VAC sector. And that section really goes through the successes, the progress around funding interventions, programming, research, coordination, but it also it does touch on the missteps and the gaps. And we do have an annex that focuses on the global partnership to end violence and a critical analysis of the potential failures that led to that. So I won't go into detail because it's going to take a lot of time. but just wanted to flag that. And we do recommend that you, if you have time, to look at that. Next slide. As part of this kind of looking back to look forward, it was also looking at the critiques of the back sector. And again, we won't have time. This would take like 30 minutes to go through, but really do recommend that you, if you have the time, to look through these various critiques. I'll just pause so you can look at the slide and the different subheadings. But yeah, as you can, I mean, many of the gaps won't be new. Some may be new reflections. And these critiques did come from the conversations we had, the key informant interviews, as well as our respective work in the sector and the desk review as well. I'm going to pass it on to my colleagues, Muna and Swati, who will go into the recommendations that are very much rooted in the critiques that I just showed.
Thanks, Ghazal. So as Ghazal mentioned, the report was written when US aid cuts and all the other ODA cuts were beginning to happen. And obviously the landscape has shifted a lot since then. Our hope was that the recommendations in the report would give people the evidence that they needed to make some fundamental shifts to the way they deploy their assets and how they respond in the moment. So today, as Ghazal said, we're just going to give a brief overview of the recommendations. We encourage you to have a look at the report. There's a lot more meat in there. There's a lot more detail and there are a lot more examples. But we are very pressed for time, unfortunately. So at the time, many donors were holding back. They were waiting for the dust to settle. Many were saying, we want to wait and see how things pan out before we start thinking about what we do next. And our first recommendation, which is as important now as it was then, is just to move money, to move more money, and to move it urgently and with flexibility. The sector is depleted, as you will all know. It's exhausted. It's overburdened by donor requirements. And it can be strengthened through long-term core funding, which is something we've called for, and by donors adjusting their requirements, or working through groups who can do what they can't. And there are plenty of groups out there who can. Alignment and collaboration are also critical across all parties. The sector is fragmented. Many are working in isolation, especially donors, and local communities and local leaders continue to be marginalized, unfortunately. So the groups that are working in this space need to align their strategies to avoid duplication and should bridge divides between the sectors that many of them have already funded. So many donors are funding in education, in climate, sexual reproductive health, adolescent girls, gender, etc. And violence intersects across all those issues. And so supporting integrated programming is much more of a mirror of what we're seeing happening on the ground in terms of the holistic approach that's taken by communities, by local leaders, grassroots organizations and practitioners. We had a recommendation also about the definition of violence being more broad and more expansive and more inclusive, and more including overlooked forms of violence as well. So children in humanitarian settings, LGBTQI children, children with disabilities, among others. And the need to be vocal about a continued commitment to VAC, which helps signpost others who are working in the space to know sort of where, who's working here and who's continued with their commitment. There's also the ability to use, philanthropy to test bold ideas and to take big bets. So supporting community-led, context-driven solutions with children and young people at the forefront always, and sharing learning with others. Philanthropy has a space that's, different to others in terms of their ability to fund that kind of more innovative or more risk-based work. And then considering partnering with local governments who have a commitment or expressed a commitment to violence against children, and supporting alongside that local groups, especially those who are led by members of the community, survivors, women and youth, and focusing on place-based strategies and those drivers of change. I'm going to hand over to Swati to talk through our next slide, which has got the rest of our recommendations.
Thanks so much, Mana. Hi, everyone. I'm Swati, and I'll just go through the rest of them and then we'll open it up to questions or comments from you all. So just following on from what Mana said, the other recommendations that we really saw in the report was really around encouraging the funders in the space to really explore leveraging all forms of financing. It's not a secret to anyone on this call that we've got really declining levels of ODA across the global north countries. And actually, we really need to think about how we leverage financing, not just from sort of, development finance institutions or AIDA funding, but I think what we also saw, and I think, there are examples that are live at the moment, is there are now like sort of a lot of private family offices and sort of money from wealthy families and individuals that's been grouped together in terms of different financing options as well. There's an example that's going to be announced from India shortly with a collective of wealthy family offices. So I think that really thinking about how new trends and where the money is coming from across the global south also is about exploring all the different types of financing beyond just kind of traditional grant financing or what we've done in the past. Another recommendation is around the strengthened infrastructure and the constellations. There is already an architecture that has been in existence that has come from grassroots that several funders have also invested in where it comes to actually facilitating and moving money directly into local communities. You see lots of different either pooled funds, collaborative funds, intermediary funds, activist-led funds, Global South held funds. And all of those organizations are in great positions where they're actually rooted in the community and they're able to leverage not just global finance, but also some of the emerging trends that we're seeing where some of the funding is also coming from domestic financing options as well, or regional ones. So what can we do to help strengthen that infrastructure that already exists as well, and the constellations of the sharing between those groups? At the moment, there has been leadership from key sort of private foundations in the past, as well as kind of governments. And at the moment, that leadership there feels like there's a vacuum. That's really what we felt from our conversations with people, from our own vantage points in the space as well. And I think that making sure that we actually have some funders who take up and lead in that space. I think a broader critique that we really saw is that I think there isn't really bold leadership to help like move new funders and sort of graduate new like existing funders into sort of more spaces. Being inclusive, intergenerational, accountable, and trauma informed. One of the kind of things that we really saw, and I'm sure, again, not a surprise to anyone, there have been critiques around sort of tokenism or sort of extractive practices where it comes to like involving survivor voices or youth voices within the space as well. So making sure that the spaces are really inclusive, not just relying heavily on adult-led movements, but making sure youth movements have a space to really be within the leadership spaces and not tokenized, or they're just invited in to be part of an incredible panel and then sort of, asked to leave the rest of the conferences or spaces as well. I think also just being aware that, survivorship has many different faces. There are people that want to identify as survivors. There are also those that choose not to have that as part of their narrative. And it doesn't mean that, we should exclude them from spaces like this or just sort of have certain voices who we believe to be the most powerful survivor voices. But what does the plethora or the spectrum of what that looks like be part of that? I think Ghazal said it at the beginning as well, but like, how do you strengthen what's existing and not reinvent? I think a lot of funders always want to be, the first to do something or launch a brand new initiative or, have something that's the silver bullet or like this unicorn that we haven't seen in the space. And I think it's like there are, we should look at the past failures, and the report does go into, some looks backs and insights into other partnerships that have, been launched with a lot of fanfare and then, have also dwindled or collapsed as well. And what can we learn from that in terms of strengthening and not just consistently putting new resources into reinvention? The other thing, and this is a broader critique of private philanthropy, is being accountable as well. Funders often ask other stakeholders to be accountable and uphold those values of transparency and honesty, and we want to see more private funders play that role. And I think what we also heard in a lot of our conversations during the development of this report is that funders were waiting for the dust to settle. Like as Ghazal said, a lot of our conversations were up until sort of April last year. And, a lot of funders were saying, well, we want to think about how we put our investments into future proofing. And I think, we're living in a very, very volatile time in the world. Like, I think predicting what the world is going to look like in a year or 2 years or 5 years from now, I think the importance or the prioritization of that titled the report a pivotal moment for donors, because the sector, from what we see, is fragmented, it's underfunded, it's really politically vulnerable, but it's rich with opportunities. And if we can actually shift more funding into locally led, politically informed approaches, we really believe that we can't just return to the way things were, top down, fragmented, siloed, but really it's about working collectively, boldly, and with a long-term vision that will actually respond to the state of the crisis.
Sabine, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a little bit longer than expected, but hopefully you will have the chance to read the full report. We're going to wrap here. Unfortunately, we don't have much time for questions. I don't, Cassie, are there any questions in the chat? No? I see there's a question to share the PowerPoint. We're happy to share it. If you send us an email, we'll share it because we probably won't share it with the whole group, but just send us an email, we can share it. Thank you all very much. As always, we organize these town halls every 6 weeks to keep you informed. Also, if you want to inform the group, the sector of anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and we'll try slot you in. And we look forward to working with you over the next 9 months as we work towards the ministerial conference. And Cassia, thanks for the great moderation. And thank you all for participating and wishing you a lovely rest of your day or evening.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon. Bye bye.